Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about something in my family going back a little bit. This booklet, it's a very old booklet, was put together by my grandfather. His name was William Henry Rothmeyer, and he was born in 1899. And I remember him quite well, although he died when I was but a child. I do remember having conversations, and I'll talk about some of the stuff. But it's an interesting thing. The saga of this book even existing is amazing. My real grandmother died in childbirth with my mother in 1935. She died the following day after my mother was born on February 21st. She died on the 22nd. And a few years later, my grandfather remarried. And I'm trying to find a nice way to put this, and I don't know how to put it, but she was probably one of the most miserable, rotten people I've ever met in my life. And that's being nice. But nonetheless, she treated my mother terribly. And I got to understand her as a child. She was really nasty. When I was a child, when I was a little boy, the way I discovered that Santa Claus didn't exist was because of her. She came and said, "There's no such thing," She's just not a very friendly person. But she had a very strange habit, and it took me a while to understand it. And I regret that I didn't understand it earlier. And that is that my grandfather kept diaries. My grandfather kept a scrapbook. My grandfather was fascinated by history and kept all kinds of stuff from World War I and whatever, all of his medals and other things and coins from all over the world, which fascinated me when I was a kid. And I told her how much I loved them. But this is what I learned. When you told her you liked something, she would throw it out or give it away. And so when I was a kid, I told her I loved my grandfather's medals, and she gave them away. And then there was all these wonderful coins from all over the world. And I told her I liked them. Well, they're gone. And in the house, they had this phenomenal, what was called a goose chair. And the whole chair was carved wood shaped in the shape of gooses and goose heads. It was beautiful. It was a Victorian chair. It was lovely. I made the bad mistake of saying I liked it. The following week it was gone. I wasn't around her all the time, and so she had time to throw things out. I told my grandmother I like this. And I was still around when she tossed it into the garbage. And I saved it. Sadly, so much of my grandfather was thrown into the garbage, was destroyed, was given away. But I stopped mentioning anything to her after that. And when she died, I found one box that had lots of early material dealing with my grandfather's parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, going back to the Civil War. Fortunately, I didn't see it as a kid, and fortunately, I didn't say I liked it. But I rescued this, and this is a little bit of a treasure trove from the 1920s. He was wounded very badly in World War I. Back of his leg was blown off, and he was in bad shape, and he was saved because of this ring. And I wear this ring. I said I liked it, and I grabbed it that day. That's why I have it. And the interesting thing is that he was really banged up and he couldn't move around too much, so he created lots of diaries. He had like 60 books full of writing, which unfortunately were destroyed. But I have the one item left. And he had lots of books, and he was fascinated by history, and it's the only thing I have. And I treasure it. And I've been going through it and finding pictures and all kinds of stuff. And I get to understand my grandfather's personality a little bit. He loved ships. He loved history. He loved the presidency. He was fascinated by it. Many of the things of which excite me. I had conversations with him, but I was 7, 8 years old at the time. And so our conversations were somewhat juvenile. I tried asking him about World War I, but he got too upset about it. And I know he came back on the France, the four-stacker, made by the French in 1912. He was wounded in France on November 9th, 1918, 2 days before the armistice. He was an interesting fellow. He was a funny guy. He was a smart guy. But sadly, so much of his life and his history is lost. It's interesting, People's personalities are strange. And this individual, who was my step-grandmother, was truly a frightening and a rotten individual. I have no feelings or love for her. I don't hate her. I pity her. She wasn't a good person. And nobody liked her. And when she died, my mother suggested having a big funeral, and I said no. We'll make it simple. And then we just brought her to a grave and never marked it and let her be there. And I felt that was the best way to honor her. But for my grandfather, I found him to be an amazing individual. He went through hell. I mean, he was, for the rest of his life, he was maimed. And he used to sit with me and tell me about his grandfather, who was a Civil War veteran, and how he was a blacksmith, and how he got kicked in the head by a mule and had a dent in his head from a horseshoe. And he used to talk about music and sing. I've seen so much of myself in him. And sadly, he died when I was 10. But we had already moved away, so I didn't see him from about the age of 8. I remember saying goodbye to him. Kind of sad. I didn't quite understand I would never see him again, but of course he knew. And so I always have kept this with me since I kind of stole it from the garbage. And I'm going to keep this, and then this will go to my nephews or whatever. My nephew got all of the papers that I was able to get. And I said, there's papers there from your great, great, great grandfather and grandmother. Preserve this and keep this. And so he will. And that'll be very good. And in time, this will go to him, and he'll preserve that, and that'll go to future generations to share. It's a pity when people don't want to share history. Perhaps one of the reasons I have such a strong desire to preserve it is because of the fact that I had to fight so hard to get what little I could. Interesting when you think about it. Thank you. And thank you to my grandfather. Thank you for being something very special.